How many people here are actually familiar with Mr. Danny Wang?
All right. Well, thank you. But I don't expect everyone to know me.
Yeah.
I'm not a superstar like Derek.
If you have the slightest interest in disco music, you might have come across his label, Balihu Records, which means what? Balihu?
It was actually a nonsense word. A ballyhoo in English means a big commotion, like a big noise. But it's actually a nonsense word. Because when I made the label, everybody was saying spiritual grooves, deep house, and I just wanted to avoid attaching that kind of meaning to it. It should be kind of nonsense. It should be just anything you want it to be. You know, I mean, the word disco was invented ever since disco. How many words do we have now for what we call dance music? Trip-hop, two-step, drum and bass. It's all, but the point of all this is the possibilities of music over a 4/4 beat. And it's been that way for about 100 years, actually. Blues was music over a 4/4 beat. Rock is, bossa nova is. So, you know, I wanted to not attach, say, this is house, or, you know. I just used the word disco a lot because since the 70s, when this was all invented, about 1973 officially, is the proper birth date of disco. That's Love is the Message, that's the whole Philly sound, Gamble and Huff, if you're familiar with it. It's, you know, we're playing with the same ideas since that time for the past 33 years or so. And it's been called disco since that time, and it was a much more open word back then. And it's kind of like the Tower of Babel, where everything split apart and split into different genres, but obviously, like a big tree, they go back to the same root. We're going to have lots of very corny metaphors here today. I apologize, but yeah, so
but
I just say disco.
Didn't you start Balihu back then initially to get DJ gigs?
Well, yeah, because I realized the only way in 1993 anybody would get a gig, I mean, this is, you know, 1993 is Danny Tenaglia and Junior Vasquez. And
we're talking about New York, right?
We're talking about New York, and, you know, and still I feel this way. I mean, you know, nobody needs an openly homosexual Chinese-American DJ pop star. You know, I still don't think it's ever going to happen, and that's okay. You know, I'm happy to do my own thing. But I realized the only way to get any attention and to say, okay, here's somebody who obviously knows something about disco or house music is make a record. You know, so I just took all these records. I took 17 samples because everybody was just sampling at the time. I just strung them together and made sort of a parody record of, okay, you know, here's my idea of if you were to sample all the old disco records. But of course, the joke was that you couldn't recognize a single one, you know. Well, you could recognize about 3 out of 17, you know, and there was this sort of joke on it, like, if anybody recognizes all these records, you know, I'll give you a trip to Paris or something. And eventually, one person named a few samples.
But not all.
Not all of them, no.
Shall we maybe show one of your early tracks?
All right. So now, what should we do about the DVD? Okay.
Or you want to show the little piece?
Let's do this little introduction first for 5 minutes, and then it's slightly sentimental, but since we spent 3 hours yesterday talking about what somebody did in their bedroom at the age of 18, we're going to spend 5 or 6 minutes and watch a poetic, lovely video of a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale about music and about life and other things. And then we'll come back to the proper topics here. Okay, so, Garrett.
Oh.
Okay. I think that's it. Well,
so
we could almost end the talk here now with just a simple comment and opinion on the current state of music.
So this is where we are today?
Well, this is where we are, okay.
The sweet music disappeared, and now the machines took over?
Yeah, and it's actually quite amazing, because I think the tale was written in 1880 or something. When did Hans Christian Google? Anybody have their computer on? When did Hans Christian Andersen live? Denmark.
Yeah, I think about
1880, I think. And this was actually the beginning already of mechanical music. In fact, let's talk a little history now. I've been living in Berlin for the past 3 years, and there are these amazing machines from about 1900 to 1910. We're talking, in fact, I could draw them for you. Now this becomes practical. Here's another question. If anybody has the answer for this, Chinese bells, what are they for? From 2,800 years ago. The answer will be revealed later in this lecture. But in Germany, if you go, there are these huge things called Spieluhr, and they look like this. Gerd, you've seen these things?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, they're also in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London if you go. Just imagine this is covered with dots. These things were from about 1900, and they were actually like the first mechanical hand crank things. They're huge. I mean, they're this big, or they can be this big, and people already had dance parties. I'm talking DJ dance parties in 1900 to 1910 using large mechanical wheels. There's even a strange woman in East Germany called, Charlotte von Helsdorf or something. She was a transsexual East German in the 60s who went from becoming a man to a woman and collected these things. She had thousands of them, and they were in this archive in East Germany. I've yet to see these. but I'm told they exist, and a lot have been lost. So again, this DJ thing going back over 100 years already, and the invention of mechanical music also goes back 100 years. So yes, I think we're in a state of mechanical music having almost completely replaced
sweet music,
organic, human-played music.
but maybe we should show
All right.
them what you did as you started out.
All right, so this is
producing
how
music.
Garrett and I got to know each other. And, you know what? Let's do an overview, because I don't want to give you the impression I'm going to sit here and talk for 3 hours about what I do. In fact, this whole talk, I hope, will be about 10 minutes now, 5 minutes about myself, and the rest is about... Can we open the thing, please? Let's take an overview. All right, if you go to the second page, some things to think about. The first things that came to mind were, it's personal opinion again. It's perfectly all right to be asocial, and it's okay not to like or buy stuff, because we're all here, and we want to be polite, we want to be nice to each other, and lots of people here, I think, almost everybody here is talented, has something to say. If I were running this camp, I'd almost want to say, turn off the computer, turn off the mobile, and turn off the email. MySpace especially, because when you really, music, people who really concentrate on music, does anyone know Eric Satie? Jim No Pity. We all know Eric Satie, right? Da, 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 da. Yes, famous theme. Does anyone know how he died? He'd lived alone in a room for 15 years. When he died, he was covered with old newspapers and umbrellas because he was so afraid that every time he went out, he was afraid of the rain or something like that. He collected old umbrellas. And you know how he actually made music, right? Why he started making ambient music. Because there was too much loud accordion music in the cafes, and I was thinking this yesterday when the radio show was blasting out over the speakers during dinner. He simply wanted quieter music so he could digest his food. There have actually been studies by the American military in the 50s and 60s that say loud music with rhythm actually disturbs digestion and is not good for your health. I really wanted to put on some Satie during dinner yesterday. Number two, why we're here. What we're going to explain in a minute. Just as a painter cannot use only one color and straight lines to paint, it's really about expanding our minds, our understanding of chords and melodies and harmonies, and also of tone palette, which we'll get into a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to jump down a bit here. And I think maybe what always scared me most of all about modern music is the amount of force that it entails. I mean, you're talking about 120 dBs of sound coming at you, and we kind of live in a might makes right world right now. It's George Bush running things and everything. Whoever has the biggest bomb wins. But I don't think that should be the case, and you probably don't either. Might should not make right, especially with music. But like it or not, even though so many DJs talk about peace and love and the world, whatever, I think they follow the exactly same principle. Whatever's loudest and thickest and fattest is what cuts through, and the rest doesn't really matter. And, frankly, it's a great way to destroy everything that's great around you. And probably the thing that bothers me most of all is things like MTV, because as we all know, music has been going downhill probably since about early 80s. It's exactly when MTV came in. And this is when the picture and propaganda replaced music. More often than not, almost always, music is basically marketed towards a social group. It's saying, you're gay, you listen to this music. You're black, you listen to this music. You're white, you listen to this music. And MTV has enforced that. And no matter what, we can't avoid it, even in what we do, thinking this is right. But looking at music as a pure, I don't want to say a pure mathematical or scientific phenomenon, but in the root of course, in the 60s and 70s, there were no such distinctions. I mean, everybody listened to disco. It all came together. Latin music, salsa, percussion, rock, blues, classical, it was all there, and there was really no distinction. The idea that there should be any distinction is purely a marketing ploy designed to separate people, and this might be totally obvious, but we have to start with this premise beginning. At any point in the lecture, somebody says, oh, that's not black music, that's not real, or, oh, that's not a proper classical transition, Bach would never have played that. I think we have to throw that out. We have to throw out those preconceived. So, thinking this, I started making records, and this is how Garrett and I met. And what are we supposed to hear now? We're supposed to hear something that... This is not necessarily something I'm proud of. This is maybe something I produced that you like.
That I like, and you did at a very early stage, and I think you're pretty dissatisfied these days with what you did back in the day.
Right. Let's just say the first 2 or 3 records, I just sampled a lot of stuff. I just took things that I like. I didn't know what I was doing. I hadn't really done I'd done a theory course in college, but I never learned to apply it. And I think people say often there's a 10-year rule. You start out doing something, and about 10 years later, you'll come to the revelation of how all the knowledge that you've acquired actually applies to what you do. It takes a while, actually. And even to me, I only feel like after 12 or 13 years, it's really coming together. And now a technical difficulty. Any questions or comments so far?
Do you get a lot of flack for your opinion?
Actually, less and less. In fact, I can't even believe I'm here, and people are giving me a chance to speak to so many people.
Because your views are pretty...
well, the view, okay. Let's go to the first page now and see what we're actually going to talk about and see what we think about those views. The overview is we're going to listen to some records, first of all, so you don't sit here in silence again. It's so boring to listen to somebody talk about their opinions and not hear what they're actually talking about.
It was off switched.
Okay, here we go.
So, back to the beginning.
Okay, back to the page. And now, there's nothing to clap about. I didn't make it, I just strung it together. And actually, I could never find the people to pay anyhow. It was MCA. So in case you're wondering, on later records, I put all the samples on the label and just said, here are the originals, and if you like this, then you should just go buy the original. All right, so this...
But it's still a great record.
It's a
great record.
Decent re-edit because it took the best parts of that record, which were actually very short. That guitar solo is like this long, it's 20 seconds.
And it's
and just extended it and made it longer.
And it's a great record to dance to and have fun to, so...
If you're in the slow group. All right, this brings us to page... Let's do a quick overview, okay? In this package, you will find... What do we find? Okay, overview, personal journey we're talking about, how I got into this whole thing. That's, I hope, the only personal part. Okay, page 1. And then finding records. So I started seeing this list. Now we're on to page 1 and 2. See these lists here? Okay, so I was living in San Francisco. This was about 1991. And my friend said, you've got to see this magazine. There are these two gay black guys from Chicago who put out a big list of all the records that were house records for them up until about 1987, which was already amazing. This is 1991. There was some Strictly Rhythm records. That was it. No one talked about house music the way they do now. Techno, people didn't really even talk about techno that much either. Like Derek May, like he was saying yesterday, only in a few warehouse parties. And here was this list of 100 records that I'd never heard of. And furthermore, you'd go out to the record shop and they'd be everywhere for $2 or $3. Like here's that Dan Harmon, and you'll recognize some of these. Shall we go down the list a bit? Does everyone know what Love Is the Message is? Most? Kind of. Love Is the Message is the #1 house, the first, 1973, what I was talking about. You mentioned house music. And then we go down the list, I think a Trussell, the thing that was just sampled was number 60, I Love It by Trussell. And we just went and found this record for like $3, and it was just amazing. So I decided I would go, and you would get these things on bootlegs. I would go to every record shop and stop. I wouldn't stop until I found every record on this list and found out why they were good. And a lot of time I would buy them, I was thinking, this is total crap. Why would anybody play this, Because I was getting into Strictly Rhythm and all this stuff at the time. And, the bass drum is sometimes really tiny. Sometimes it's very corny and kitschy. Like Clark Sisters, You Brought the Sunshine is actually kind of a swing beat. It's like a bum, ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba kind of beat. It's not at all disco. And then, this is for your reference, by the way, too, because maybe you'll go and check out some of these records one day.
This is Love Is the Message.
Love Is the Message, you have it. Yeah. Page 8 and 9. There's a book I recommend strongly. It's called Music, the Brain, and Ecstasy. And we're not talking about ecstasy, the drug. We're talking about the feeling of ecstasy. And there's a whole bit about, it's a book that basically, it's probably the best book of the type I've ever found. It's all about musical research about every aspect of music, actually. Melody, harmony, preference, autistic people who can play music perfectly but who have an IQ of 20, for example. There's a great story in there that I can tell you in a bit. Taste. What is musical taste, and why do people carry it to such extremes? We use the word taste not just as an explanation, but for justification. Some people prefer mangoes, the other people prefer papaya. It begins with the notion of the role that music should play in your life. It says folk singer Pete, the important thing is not is it good music, but what is the music good for? Before everything else, people use music for mood enhancement. We've known for a long time that different personality types are attracted to different kinds of drugs, legal and illegal. So there's a parallel here. We take music, it's just like taking a drug, isn't it? Easy listening is a kind of martini. We want to get laid back like marijuana. We want psychedelic stuff with classical or psychedelic rock. Let's move on to the next page, page 9. And we even talk here, I think the critic is very objective. He talks about classical versus rock. And obviously, there's something valid in both of them. In fact, it's too bad that more people don't go to classical concerts now because that's probably a little bit what's needed. But classical can be so stiff and so boring. Who can blame you? Here we go. Some social critics think the symphony orchestra is capitalist oppression. There's a strict hierarchy. We're on page 9 here in the middle. The orchestra is stratified. Everything is uniform. The music is written by expert composers and expert musicians. The audience takes no part. You're not allowed. You just sit there and listen, isn't it? You simply consume what is offered. In short, the orchestra is a music factory. Next we go down. By comparison, a rock concert is all barricade and guillotine. It is a symbol of rebellion, right? He says, it's a place to hang out, talk with friends. I put a question mark here that says rock is also profoundly anti-intellectual, which I think is highly, highly problematic. I mean, you know, I won't explain that any further. But if we move on in the paragraph, what's interesting, it says, despite all of these factors that we say, some people like reggae, some people, you know, obviously, I think everybody here probably says we like a bit of everything, and that's perfectly true, actually. I don't think there's anybody who would be here if we didn't realize there's something outside of the little genre that we started out that got us into this, you know, whether it's R&B or hip-hop or jazz or whatever. We make musical choices that are neither personal nor musical. People in general, take on music to blend in with their peers. We all have to deal with this because we've all DJ'd for crowds where it's all about, or, you know, rock, you know. But this power force overrides, apparently, considerations of individual neurology. Some social psychologists have gone so far as to suggest we imprint to a preferred musical style during adolescence. The same way young animals imprint, they get attached to their mothers. And a lot of this happens during the years from about 10 to 12. All right. It's very interesting. And I think this imprinting, it never really stops there, doesn't it? Because at about age 17 or 18, well, 14 or 15, you start discovering sexuality. And that's one thing this thing certainly doesn't talk about, is what role sexuality plays in music.
So what role did it play for you?
For me? Personally?
In regards to music?
I can't, you know, that's a good question. I would say definitely when I discovered I was gay and I was going out to gay clubs and listening to house music. And it wasn't just that, because most of the clubs I went to weren't so much gay clubs. There was always more black people than gay people, actually, in general. But, you know, the really strong contingent, the people who really danced were the gay people, obviously, the gay black people who were, you know, doing all this. And I'll just say it simply, they taught me to be free. They taught me to just throw all your cares away and, you know, don't be embarrassed, don't be ashamed. That's the whole voguing and, you know, and breakdancing thing too. You know, you look ridiculous. You do look ridiculous spinning on your head on a floor. You know, but if you do it well enough and your soul is in it or whatever, it doesn't matter. And that's probably the biggest lesson that soul music and black music taught the entire rest of the world for the past 100 years is be free, let it out, put your body, like Stephanie Mills sings, put your body into the music, you know, and don't let it only be in your head. That's one of the most important things. Like people said of Shaka Khan, you know, I'm every woman. Well, she's one of the greatest singers because she sings with her whole body. You know, she doesn't, and if you look at actually all the great soul singers that way, they sing with their whole body. It's also very interesting because obviously microphone recording made a lot of things possible. Like in the 50s, ever since the time of Chet Baker, people say, Chet Baker and Ella Fitzgerald wouldn't even be possible without the microphone because these people were not singing. That actually kind of comes back in the 60s and 70s with the divas. They were people who were whispering to the microphone sometimes, and without a microphone, it wouldn't be possible. I mean, why do you have opera and this kind of singing in the 18th century? There's no other way to amplify the sound in a big concert hall.
So technology is a good
Technology
thing.
is many times a wonderful thing. And also I want to say this thing about repetitive. There's always this conflict between, do I want to create tension and build in all the way Bach and Debussy and all these, you know, classical people wrote orchestras, but there is such a thing as getting into a trance. Where's our mathematics professor here? Who was that guy who was talking with yesterday?
I think you're talking about Richard, but he's...
Richard's not a participant?
No.
He's not? Okay, I'm sorry.
He just cares for them.
Oh, does anyone know Richard, your caretaker? Richard's the tall guy. He's actually studies mathematics, and he showed me this incredible graph yesterday about certain chaos patterns. You know, chaos patterns are those goofy things. You get the and the more you look at them, they keep on changing, and they, you know, do that. And there are other different kinds of mathematical formulas which describe behavior in populations, behaviors in human beings, like smoking tobacco. And it's interesting. You start out with any point, and the graph he showed me looked like this. Okay, it was, hey, paper here. This is a Spirua. The graph was fascinating. It looked like this. And you start out with this very simple mathematical formula. Where's my other pen? And so here it is. Okay? This is just random mathematical formula. This is x. This is y. Okay? For x, we have, negative 1, let's see, negative 1/3 x plus x squared. And then for y equals negative 4. Something really simple, okay? You start out with a dot here.
Not that simple.
Okay? The graph looks like this. It bends, it bends, it bends, it bends. This is exactly how it looks. And after a while, strangely, no matter what numbers you put in, the graph freezes. It just stays right there. It doesn't move. This describes behaviors, patterns that obviously happen in human societies and in our brains. It seems to me to prove that there is such a thing as a locking groove, that you get into this trance and you just don't get out of it, and it feels really good. And I'm not going to argue with that because, it feels good. Do it. But, so I'm not denying there is this thing. At a certain point, there is also this thing called boredom. I mean, after a while, it's like, how much more? Like the Emperor with a Nightingale. I don't need to say any more. A picture says 1,000 words. How do we, at the same time, get the wonderful lessons of African music, of falling into a trance, of having repetition, of having boom, ba-da-dum, 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 and at the same time of grabbing classical progressions and all those things that really make music beautiful? I think it's possible to have both of those things, and a lot of those lessons, in a very naive way, what people put together as disco music in the 70s is probably the closest thing we'll ever get to that. Because when you look at everything from ABBA to the most basic, like Van McCoy, The Hustle, we're going to play that in a minute, the structures are so similar to what people like Bach were already doing in 1780. Bach basically did equal temperament. This we're going to move on to in just about 3 minutes, I hope. When Bach created equal temperament keyboard, which is, okay, are we there? Not a pretty sound. Let's change the sound a bit. Why is it so buzzy? When Bach started playing with this equal temperament keyboard in around 1780, I think, he already laid down all the rules which would be used up until now for the next 250 years. But they hadn't really discovered rhythm yet. Not the way that African America showed us in the 20th century. And actually, I shouldn't say just African America, because in Brazil, obviously, something parallel happened, where you had a mixture of European and African cultures, and incredible things happened there too. What were we talking about now? The question.
Mathematics.
Mathematics. The locking groove, that's right. How do we get this? So I think maybe we're going to move to Bach now. Yeah? Can we do this? So for me, I guess the personal mission was, how can I find out how all this became possible at all? And here we're going to get in some technical stuff, okay?
But if you have any questions.
Any questions so far?
Then.
Okay, and I hope. Sorry, please, yes.
You said, was it back in '91 that you found that list, and you went and you got all the records off of that list, correct? And you wanted to listen to them to find out why they were good?
I just want to know what they were. I mean, like somebody says to you, like your wine corner. I don't know. Let's find an example of something else.
Did
like
that
ice cream, like Baskin Robbins, 51 flavors. All your life you've had vanilla, and suddenly someone says there's a shop where you can get strawberry, kiwi, fudge, vanilla, everything. You just go to the shop.
Did that list, make the standard for what you would deem was good and bad in music?
It wasn't necessarily, because as I was saying, I would get this list, and sometimes I bought the records, and I'd be like, I wouldn't play this. This is horrible, or this sounds like crap. It's just like, or this is way too, like this record, this is way too fast. This is 134 BPM. We all know that because we've all played with a drum machine. And I'm thinking, but house music is supposed to be 120 BPM, or Tony Humphrey's DJ mix is only 116 BPM. How can I possibly play that? Who's going to listen to that? I didn't know that it was like a bunch of gay men with tambourines.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff surprised me, and a lot of the records I still don't have, because I realized maybe I don't have something to learn from this record, or maybe it's not as good as someone else thought it was. I hope that answers.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Where were we?
But don't you feel like Don Quixote sometimes, fighting against windmills?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, because I wonder, no, I don't believe that, no. I actually believe that all human beings the world over, the more you DJ, I really believe that, this sounds really corny now, I really believe that music is the most universal thing, and it's the closest thing to love and truth we'll ever find. And if you don't believe that, you shouldn't be doing music. And furthermore, that, that these are things that are built into our brains, which I would like to prove or discuss seriously in a minute. And if you reach down close enough, you can touch everyone. Because this was the case in the 60s and 70s, and only now, with massive commercialization and MTV and all this media bullshit, have we somehow accepted that there are these separate categories and tribes which are, especially on MTV, white people and black people, or suburban people and urban people, when what's really functioning in the back of the human brain is more or less the same, especially when it comes to music. And the 70s seem to show us that for a moment, and maybe the 50s too. When you jazz, when you bossa nova, everybody can get into a great bossa nova song, like One Note Samba, or Girl from Ipanema. Girl from Ipanema? Somebody sing it. Right? We can all sing it. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas. We can all sing it.
But what is your solution to the problem?
The solution, Red Bull. I hope, and I'll just say it right now, what I hope when you go home, what you take with you today, I'm not a very good musician, and I can't really play the keyboard and the guitar properly. What I've got accumulated is a great knowledge of what this thing is. And if everyone goes home today and you're no longer content to make what you've been making, which mostly, I'm guessing, is structurally relatively simple or repetitive thing based around loops, or you've been content to do that so far, or maybe you need more time in life because it's taken me a long time, maybe 10 years or so, in life to discover, you have to go home with the conviction that this really matters and that repetition is not enough and making a simple hit is not enough. Because making good music is something, I hate to say this, but it's between you and God. And I don't mean God religious because I'm not really religious, I'm not Islamic or Christian or a little bit Buddhist maybe. But it's between you and God because there are rules of physics and mathematics out there in the universe. Even if Bach didn't discover this stuff and they hadn't calculated these scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, they'd be there in the universe anyway. And if you look all around you I'm really sounding like a religious nut, I know. If you look at the way plants grow in the Fibonacci sequence, 1, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on, it's all around you. And in fact, we're going to get to that, about how plants react to growing to music. So why don't we go to the universal stuff? All right, so really quickly, 1 minute here. Rethinking music, dance music. How we got into this. I played you one example. We can name off hundreds of thousands. I was actually going to play you, and you probably know this. What are we going to do? Number one, first of all, we got into sounds. Okay, we'll get into that later. George Benson, Give You the Night. Anybody know that? Give you the night, tonight, right? And again, the changes in there. It does a change to 1-4-5 in the middle again. Michael Jackson, Off the Wall. Dun 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 bum bum. Right? We know that stuff. So I started thinking about all these records and sort of put them into a category in my mind. Rethinking music, dance music. Here on this first page again. Level 0. Wade has just invented this because he's always saying, Danny, what's running in your head right now? I'm saying, it's a big 0. 0, 0, 0. What does that mean? The groove is not changing. It's just doing the same thing over and over again. Da, 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 da. And we'll go to this in a minute. Level 1, it seemed like there were some records that seemed to have an added sonic complexity. For example, let's make an example of this. Some records have a great groove, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Oh, here's a great one. Here's a great example. Chic, I Want Your Love, one of the best disco grooves of all time. Well, there are hundreds of them. Right? Although it's not really fair to say that this is a totally repetitive groove because it actually does a very subtle thing in the bass line already. It's basically going back and forth between two keys. So. To try my love and see. Chic is more sophisticated than we thought. Okay? You might say it's... Huh?
Danny, do you know Moody Man's I Can't Kick This Feeling when it hits? It samples.
You just sampled it, right? Well, yeah. I think we're talking about level 0 again. Level 0. Steal groove from the past, loop it, repeat it, it never changes, it never varies. You'll never get a key change out of it. You'll never get anything more, you'll never even get a second lyric. Don't play it. Don't believe the hype. I don't care. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, Moody Man is going to hear this. He's going to beat me up.
I think Moody Man doesn't care either.
Right, well, I mean, this is the thing about conviction. We have all these people who clearly know what dance music can be. He knows how good chic is. So why don't you try to make something like this instead of stealing from other people? I mean, that becomes a moral and an ethical question, not a musical question.
But playing the devil's advocate again, how many people are actually involved in doing a record like Cheeks, I Want Your Love? It's more than one guy.
Maybe about 8 people. Well, also, thanks to computers, I would say, I'm the first one. If there weren't computers and programming all this stuff, or an 8-track, I wouldn't be making music either, so I'm glad for this technology. If you understand the principles, one person can do it. I'm not saying it's going to sound exactly like that, but you can at least give it a try, And if you've got 2 or 3 other musicians in the studio and a good violin player and a good horn player, you may come pretty close, because I'm actually going to talk about this in a minute. It's also here. With about 8 tracks, you could do this record. And again, how many tracks did the Beatles use in the 60s? 4-track. Does anyone know Carpenters? Does anyone know how Carpenters as in Carpenter? Oh, there's our mathematics professor. Are you happy? That's what he showed me last night in Honky Tonk, the locking groove. It's pure pleasure. Carpenters, send interviews, we just used 8 to 12 tracks, actually. When you think about how much good music came from the Carpenters, with a little training and a little ingenuity and a good voice, you realize that all this stuff with Pro Tools, like 256 tracks, do you really need that? I mean, if you really need 256 tracks to do, like, drum and bass, or, you really should think about another career. Now I'm sounding really sarcastic. But, okay. Level 2, we move on to more basic R&B blues pop composition. And, something a record like The Break, like what it is played here, might be a good example. The changes are actually not complex. It starts out in, I think it's actually a D minor, like boom, 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 boom. And it does the changes to, higher, higher tension, back to the original. It's a very basic composition. But of course, you can also have extended cyclical modular compositions. And that means we really modulate to a lot of different keys. We come back to the same key, but we're going through some very complex changes. Let's do an example of this. For example, I think I'll even play you the next Balihu record. I found an obscure classical record from some East European symphony orchestra. They had done a version of Debussy's Clair de Lune, which is a composition from about 1890, I think, and done it as a disco version. Let's see, what number is it? Okay, number 8. All right, this might take about a minute or 2. But notice again, we start out with a very simple tonal center. It's going to modulate to a lot of different keys, and it has a lot of color. It's not all major and minor. There are wonderful nines and things. There's a violin doing a triplet, going da 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 over a 4-beat. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. All right. I hope that wasn't too pedagogic, too pedantic. There are an entire cycle of modulations going over. I don't know how many bars that was, like 32 bars or something.
It sounds like something from the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack.
It does, right? Well, yeah, Beethoven was in the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, so why not Debussy? And again, I'm going to say, I'm not a big, classical. For example, there's loads of classical I don't know. There's loads of classical we all don't know. And there are lots of people I know who are perfectly trained in classical who don't necessarily understand the principle why it's beautiful. Especially people who are forced to play classical and violin from piano from early age. I think a lot of them are not necessarily happy with what they have to do. For people like us who are so deeply in music, especially who want a beat and everything, I think we're in a great position to appreciate this kind of stuff, and because it can show us the possibility of what we actually want to do in our own music. And furthermore, something like a triplet should make perfect sense, because anybody who here plays conga or plays Latin percussion? A few people more, come on. No, really, no. All right, you've got a conga, you've got boom, tack, boom, jack, boom, jack, and often you have what is the feel like a ba ka 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 ka, right? You have these triplets going, which is doing the exactly same thing as a violin. When you've got a computer keyboard, you can do the exactly same thing on your keyboard. Should be no conflict, actually. You should be able to put all these things together.
So what would you recommend to an 18-year-old kid these days, feeling the urge to do music?
Oh, yeah. Don't get a computer. There is this belief, and even here, yes, it disturbed me a little bit. Then I found, Tom showed me the other instruments. First came here, they showed me the upstairs rooms, and the instrument room was closed, and I didn't see the control room. And I saw 8 rooms with 8 computers and bare walls. And I thought, this is the last thing. This is the last way anybody has an introduction to music. It's totally false. Because this belief that you have this computer there that's just going to, has all the capabilities, all you have to do is press a button. I think I actually don't really need to tell you this. You know, music is a physical thing. It's a tactile thing. You've got to be able to touch it and hit it and play it. And every instrument has a different nuance. A guitar has different ways of tuning it. You can tune a guitar so it doesn't even sound like a regular guitar. You know, all this, all lost on the computer. The computer is exactly that mechanical bird that you see in the video in the beginning. I think I'm stating the obvious here.
But computers did great things too.
Yeah, and you know, I record on a hard drive recorder too. I mean, it's a box actually. It's a 12-track box. Computers are lovely if, yeah, please. I'm glad someone is saying something.
Saying that you think, I'm just asking, do you think that it should be, people should maybe play an instrument before having a computer? Because
yes, I think that would help, but I think that's not the only way. I mean, you can use the computer to learn too. I actually used the computer, I feel, in the end, to learn what all this stuff is about. It did help.
No, I'm just saying because I definitely, like where I grew up, a lot of the music that come out wouldn't have come out if it wasn't for computers. And there's like a whole scene because people could afford computers, and I guess a lot of us wouldn't be doing music.
Mm-hmm. Me
because,
too.
Yeah, so I don't know, like I'm just.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying,
you're
but
right.
I don't know what.
I think obviously with all technology, it's both ways, you know. Even the piano. This is getting. We really should move on to this topic. And I don't want to keep you here all day, okay? But I hope there's enough substance that it can keep us interested. Even the piano was, after all, considered technology. You know, this was rejected by most. This scale was basically rejected because it actually doesn't have pure tonality. And this we're going to get into right here after we look at.
There's another question.
Another question. All right.
Torsten has a question.
Torsten has a question. Lying on the couch.
But what about the political ramifications? Because obviously, I mean, when you talk about chic and all those lush string arrangements and all those lovely strings, especially in the 70s and so on, I mean, like, how many string players and orchestra players have played under not very severe conditions and so on and have been properly exploited that no one ever here would now be, you know, wanting to reduplicate the kind of thing?
Sorry? Okay, I think we have to separate the two issues. First of all, the quality of the music that's made, I don't want to say it's nothing to do with it. Every musician should be paid properly for what they do, and every artist in general. But at the same time, it's an illusion to say something like, I'm not actually a Nike fan, but the beauty or ugliness of a Nike sneaker in its design has, in a way, nothing to do with the fact whether a child laborer in China made it or not. It does in social and in whatever realm, but if there's such a realm as pure aesthetics, as in this is a beautiful line for a shoe and this is not, that line has nothing to do with who made that line or who had to manufacture it in the factory. This we're getting into, all right, now we're getting some heavy issues too, like, is there such a thing as absolute beauty? And in music, I have to say there is, and we're going to move on to this. There are scientific and real reasons for what we describe as beauty, this phenomenon in music.
But then
pure harmonies and pure melodies.
What about social conditions?
All right, first of all, I'm not sure if the musicians were really exploited in the 70s. I think a lot of them were session players. And a lot of them, in fact, were happy to have this work. There were a large number of East European classical players in the 70s in New York who were just like, look, come in the studio, we'll pay you, $50 for the afternoon, just come and play the piano. Play the violin. It's easy for them. Look, just play a few obligatos, play a few staccatos. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Done. Okay, bye. You got your $50. Where's the exploitation? You know, they didn't write the song. They're not the producers. They were there to serve a role, a small, cog in the machine, and they accepted willingly. I don't think that's exploitation,
So do you figure it's the same kind of thing if you were to, hire a couple of East European session players right now? Because there's plenty of them out there.
Well, personally, I'm a little more fair. When I hire session players, I pay them quite a bit, actually. If it's my friends especially, I say, okay, for 5 people here, everybody gets 20%. But in those days, you have 40 people, and furthermore, in the social context, it was considered normal. And you might be surprised, but for people who can really play music, I don't think they think so much about where's my rights. I think people who do music nowadays, like especially, hip-hop is like, yo, I made this beat, where's my money? Wrong. It's like, anybody can fucking do that. I'm sorry. If you really playing, done. If somebody pays me $50, that's fine. Because if I'm really a good musician, I know I can do something else with my skills and my knowledge, then where's my money? I don't think that's exploitation. You know, and I think people did it willingly. Nobody was forcing them. And a lot of people, I should say, real anecdotes, making disco with, and by the way, I know you're asking a serious question. I don't want to be like demonizing this. Like tambourine players, you know how Funky Town, my friend actually told me they knew that guy who did the tambourine on Funky Town. I was in, dun, 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 won't you take me to Funky Town? You would just go to the street and ask some guy from the gay club who had a tambourine in his bag, you know, like, come on here, we're going to give you some drugs, you know, we're going to give you some cocaine, you know, just come in the studio. Okay, can you just play the tambourine over this track for the next 3 hours? Sure, no problem. Oh, God, sorry. Really made a noise there. That's how those records were made, and that's the energy that was captured. Those people weren't exploited. They did it willingly. You know, they probably died from other causes later. You know, and I think to a certain extent.
So for the sake of
you know, the only person the only person really making the record, the producer, and possibly the person playing the keyboard, especially someone like Quincy Jones. You look at George Benson, all this stuff. There has to be a central directing intelligence in any project. Okay, I'm going to do a quick experiment now, actually. Anybody really know what the role of an orchestra conductor in an orchestra? Like, why is the guy standing there with his baton? Has anybody ever thought about this? Right? Can we do a quick experiment? I saw this on Japanese TV, and it really worked. It was amazing, okay? I'm the producer. You guys are all the instruments. You're the violin. Can we have the room in 2 sections? This way and this way, okay? You guys, give me notes. Sing me. Yes, you're going to have to sing. Sing me. Ah. Okay, you guys sing me. Ah. Nice harmony. Ah. Ah. Okay, what is the guy with the baton doing? I want. Ah. Ah. Okay, both? All right? Without a central intelligence directing things, nothing happens. Everybody else is just that, all right, thanks. I just always wanted to do that ever since I saw it on Japanese TV last year. It works. It was a program for school children, like, what is that? Okay.
Jeff there has
sorry, Chairman Mao has a question now.
Yeah, I was just curious to know, you know, what kind of, where the music of James Brown in the late 60s and early 70s sort of fit into, you know.
Okay, personally, I'll be honest. James Brown, we all know, this is the political element, definitely, and it's totally important. Who can say, you know, that it's not important, that say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud and all that stuff. And this is one of those things where, again, we'll get back to the locking groove. There's nothing wrong with a great rhythm and a beat. For me, harmonically, if I, you know, think like a stiff classical musician, there's nothing happening harmonically in James Brown. He's just playing that same beat and that same bass line over and over again, you know, make it funky, boom, chick. It's just boom, boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, boom, chick, right? That's the whole thing. I think that you're talking totally about the social and the political dimension of things, and I won't deny it's totally important. Musically, not much is happening. You know, that's not totally true because we're engineers and we're producers. You know that beat is not so simple. If anybody could play boom, chunk, boom, boom, chunk on a drum machine, we'd all be James Brown. That's not the case. Bernard Purdie was a fabulous drummer. If you look at the recording, there were probably great engineers in the studio. There were dynamics in that thing. So it's not just boom, chunk, boom. There's a swing in the hi-hats. It's not, right? You know, that's the power. That's the life in black music. So who's to deny it, you know? And those things obviously came together. Like, what's a Jungle Fever? Is it Jungle, Charakas? What's that track? The classic, dana, 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 classic thing. Comes together again. You've got, Chakasas, okay. You've got, like I think it's a clavinet riff or something, coming together with a beat and worldwide disco hit. You know, it's, all the things come into play. Did I answer your question? Kind of. Okay, somebody's saying, don't. What are we? Okay, so let's go on. Let's do one more. No, you know what? We've seen how complex modulation can be. Let's really hit the dirt here. How did we, getting back to basic music theory, and this is where we're talking about what inspires me, what should inspire everyone, what is the basic beauty of music, and how does this whole musical tone scale thing come about? Does anyone know, let's see. Who here knows the circle of fifths? What is circle of fifths? Can you answer? What is the circle of fifths? Through all the keys, right? Okay, we've got 12 notes here, and this is how to go around and around. A lot of people here don't know what it is, or you're just being modest and you're not holding up your hand.
I don't know what it is.
Okay, it's a very important concept. Okay, how did we get tone scales at all in the first place? Let's look quickly on the Robert Jourdain book. And I hope this is something you all take home with you. Okay, page 3, Building Scales, all right? This is the book which I recommend to anybody, especially if English is your native language. It's the most comprehensive book on this topic. And it'll give you a lot of faith that you can actually still keep on doing stuff. There's so much to do. From page 68, octave equivalence makes harmonic music possible. Somehow there's this thing, when you play an octave, in all cultures across the world, human beings agree. Those are the same note. And sometimes they can't even tell them apart. If you play, did I play low F or high F, for example? Or did I mix them together? Right? That's just high F. Octave, it just means any two notes across an octave, do, do, sound exactly alike. Given that, okay, let's move on here. This is page 3 in the Xerox copy, Music, the Brain, and Ecstasy by Robert Jourdain, 1997. Okay? Oh, again, Australia comes up here, very interesting. Octave equivalence is the only truly universal harmonic phenomenon. No ethnomusicologist has ever found a culture where human beings don't agree, that means all of us, that octaves aren't similar. The only discrepancy is certain Australian, Aboriginal groups never sing in octaves, that never sing, but seldom range outside a single octave. And I don't want to say it's primitive, modern, whatever, but there are amounts of it. What's most interesting is actually in Greece, which became the scales of Western Europe, and in China, actually at about the same time all this stuff was invented, was discovered and consistently refined in the same way, as if two totally independent cultures, which have no contact with each other, figured this out. We're going to get to the Chinese bells in a minute. There's one other interval, here we go, building scales, right? There's one interval between the notes that appears to be universal, and this is crucial to making scales, and thus to making melodies work. This frequency is exactly midway in an octave. In an octave from 400, okay, what's concert A? 444 hertz. Go up an octave. What happens when you take a guitar string and you cut it in half? Go up one octave, right? So 440 hertz up one octave is 880 hertz, right? What's the halfway point between 440 and 880? 660, right? Okay, we knew you knew that. I was like, oh yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, in fact, all this stuff is actually really basic to anyone, but we're really going to put it into formal terms now and see how it all relates to what we're doing. Okay, it sounds so pedantic, it's so embarrassing. Okay, most ethnologists believe that this middle note is found in the music of all cultures, suggesting the brain may be inclined to categorize it. And of course, there's a reason. You can imagine there's a harmonic vibration for 4660. There's some controversy since some pre-technological cultures only make tones through sound. Even in the West, we no longer will consider this in a moment, as it says. All right, so this is called a fifth. Basically, if you look at do, All right, here we're going to build a scale, okay? Do, do. All right, and for people who are singers, you. You. Sing me a fourth. Do. You should. Okay. Who knows La Marseillaise, the French national anthem? Sing the first phrase? Wait, someone who hasn't... Who's French here? Qui est français? Who, come on, I'm serious. Somebody? Wait, sing it? Loud. Okay. Da, 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 right? Da, da, dum. That's a fourth. All right, what about a fifth? Who knows the theme from Star Wars? Seriously. I mean, that's such the standard thing. Star Wars. Somebody sing Star Wars? Star Wars. The fifth. Dun, yeah, there we go. Dun, 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 da, 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 da. Fifth. Dun, dun, da, 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 da. Okay, that's the fifth. Absolutely imprinted. This is the closest thing you'll get in nature to an absolute pure harmony, except for the octave. That's the octave. There's your fifth. right? And it also gives that slightly Chinese weird sound that you get from some 70s. All right. So we've got, it's sort of like, what's that thing? You know that funny little, I'm trying to think if there's a funny little game with sticks that I can't remember that you keep on adding a stick. All right. You know what? We're going to have to do this. Now, you know what? I think I'm just going to have to turn this around and show you here. Okay? So we've got this. Do, do, right? We find the midway point. We don't, all of these notes don't exist. Why did we get a scale that says do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? Do, 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 re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Why isn't it do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do? Or do, re, mi, fa, sol? Why isn't it that? Why do we accept that this is the correct way to play notes? Almost, right? Especially out of tune. Thank you. All right. We have nothing here. We have only these two notes. We're in year 3000 BC. How do we find the next notes in the scale? We know this sounds good. Dum, dum. Star Wars is another 5,000 years before it comes around. Exactly. Thank you. I'm so glad someone said that. All right. So now we've got another note, and we know for sure that this note is harmonic, right? Because this is harmonic, and this is harmonic, right? So now we've got a G here. Let's go up an octave. G, 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 right? Now we've got two notes in the octave, right? So what can we do with these two notes? Someone else, don't answer. What am I going to do with these two notes? Keep on going on, right? So this is the circle fifth. What's the midpoint between G and G? D. Da, 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 right? Now I've got three notes on my scale. What do I do with the D? D. What's the fifth of D? Right? Da, 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 da. Okay. All right, let's move it down a bit. All right, so we have A. What's the fifth of A? E. Thank you. Someone knows their stuff here. Wait, there's someone here who's like a classical opera, blah, blah, blah thing here, right? You? What are you doing here anyway? Okay. All right, so there's the E. Da, da, right? E. Right? All right, so go on and on. All right, E, E. Let's just do this all the way through just to prove that this actually works. E, 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 B, B, B. Right? That's the octave, B to B. What's the midpoint of B? What's the fifth of B? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, 5. Now here's we're done with all the white keys. We move on to the black keys. B, B. Midpoint is G flat, La. Okay? Now, boom, boom. Just move down an octave so we can keep on playing upwards. Na, na. Midpoint is this. Na, na. Right? All right, this midpoint. All right? And the midpoint is here. All right? Move up. And then here. And then midpoint goes to here. Wait, am I right? Hold on. All right, there's a midpoint now. We're talking B flat in here now. B flat. I think I skipped something here. Am I right? No, that's right. All right, B flat. Move to F. Here's the fifth. No more Star Wars. We're still correct. No. And then F, F. Midpoint is C. We're back, right? So in theory, circle fifths should be perfect. Am I right? We just made a whole circle. Everything note harmonizes with the other. And actually, this is totally wrong. In nature, there's a very weird discrepancy, but on the keyboard, it may sound right. Let's look at mathematically what we just did. I was really afraid we'd never get like heavy, but now you know I'm just not here bullshitting you. Okay, and here we move on to, let's see, the scales. And quick point, why am I saying this? Because we have to recognize, first of all, why the notes are even there in the first place, and second of all, why an equal temperament scale, which is exactly what every computer program, Reason, blah, 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 was going to spit. I shouldn't be saying this because Propellerhead actually wants me to work on something for them, saying, don't buy any software synths. But what you'll get out of every equal temperament anything That's all you're ever going to get. You're never going to get the fine colors. It's like somebody's asking you to do a painting with only red, blue, yellow, and green, and you don't have purple, you don't have green, you don't have pink, you don't have any of the finer shades. So we go on to, let's take a look at tuning in. And for anybody who's seriously into electronic music, I have to recommend, this is the Bible. This book, although I don't have all the pages inside, shows you all the different possibilities. There are 100 ways that this could have split up besides into 12 equal notes. And all those colors in between are every shade of purple and pink and brown and gold. Every color you could possibly imagine is there, only we don't use it because the more we get sucked into MIDI, and especially big no-no, auto-tuners, who tune, Christina Aguilera, and everything's perfectly tuned, everything's perfectly in pitch, Beyonce, whatever. Sounds like shit, and there's a reason for it. Okay? Let's take a look. Tuning in, all right? And here we have the sense, all right? This is a perfect equal temperament keyboard here, interval 0 to 1200. On the right side, you see pure in sense of pure, which means pure ratios. Like, what is this? What is 440 and 880 in the middle? It's a half, right? Like, you might say 440 multiplied by 3 is, let's do this, 440 hertz equals hertz. Next octave up is 880 hertz. How do I get here? Multiplied by 3 times 2, right? 440 hertz, go up an octave, take it in half, equals 660, right? Okay, so let's look mathematically how we derive the modern day scale and how actually there's this discrepancy which shows us this keyboard is not quite right. We go to the next page, which is page 12. Are you there? The famous Pythagorean comma. Pythagoras, also the man who invented the Pythagorean theory. Does anyone remember geometry from school or whatever? Okay. What have we done here? 12 times. We've gone up. We should come back to 0. So we've taken 440, and we've basically gone up 1 time, 3 halves. This is what we did now in math. We multiplied 440 once by 3, so we get 660, right? We did this 12 times. Am I right? Okay. So what we have is here 3 halves to the 12th power, right? 3 half by 3 half by 3 half by 3 half by 3 half. Okay? And we'll bring it down. And we went up about half an octave every time, so we're going to reset it to the original. So this is, you just have to take this for faith because I can't draw it out. The keyboard would be too long if we did this, okay? 7th. We should come back to 0. Does this actually make 0? No. It is equal to exactly this number. Looks strange. 531,441 divided by 524,288. Anyone have a calculator here? Because I couldn't find one. Somebody has a computer on? Does somebody have a computer?
Richard can do this in his head, maybe.
Mathematics professor? No, I'm serious. I would like to, because if we look at the numbers, we can actually look at how far off we are. Can somebody do this right now? Please. Okay. So let's multiply the number A440 by this ratio. Okay? 440 multiplied by this. What is the result? 440. A concert. No. I'm not perfect pitch. That wasn't it. This multiplied by this. Huh? About 446, right? So what happened? We thought we were playing perfect harmonies and everything was going to end up exactly back at the C, but it didn't, did it? It's actually still, honestly, this isn't, if I had the answer, I would be a genius. This is one of those mysteries in nature that's actually never been solved. And it's one of the, I think, the strange, mystical, beautiful things in music and mathematics, these irrational numbers. We don't know why it is, but a fifth is perfectly harmonious with a 1. But if you keep going up fifths, it comes closer and closer to harmonizing with the original 1, but it never actually makes it. It's a spiral. And this is where we're looking here, okay?
But
if you read down the paragraph.
Danny,
Yeah?
where's the emotion in this equation?
Where's the emotion in this equation?
Yeah.
Well, if we believe, this is difficult, do we accept on faith that harmonious music such as feels a little better than, well, not that necessarily, let's say, right? We accept on faith that this sounds prettier than, well, some dramatics there. That's not really fair, is it? But, all right, if we accept on faith, then we proceed. Okay? This is what we're saying, the beautiful. We have to accept that vibrations working in harmony with each other is beautiful. 440, so we have what? Oh, so we have this. We have, rather than this, we have this. This is what the circle of fifths actually looks like, right? Or you might say it's like this. This is 440 hertz. Can everybody see this? Okay, this is 880, right? What is this is a circle of fifths, ideally. This is equal. You might say equal temperament. It's not ideal, actually. What is the reality? It's 446, right? 880 divided by 2 is 440, okay? It's 446 something. How do we reconcile this? Well, we've got a little extra thing here, right? That little part. That's called, and by the way, there's a name. Thank God, this is actually working, because I've only done this once in my whole life for an audience. So there's the Pythagorean comma. It just means it's an anomaly. It's something we can't explain. It's an extra little, like a human being born with a tail. What do you do with it? You've got to cut it off. Well, you know, you've got to use it somehow. So why don't we take this little Pythagorean comma, these little 6 hertz, and spread it evenly over this. This should be 12 notes, right? We've got 12 notes here. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? What if we take that little red part, which is the Pythagorean comma, and go 1, you get a little bit, you get 1/12, you get 1/12, you get 1/12, you get 1/12, 1/12, 1/12, 1/12. We spread it out. That way we've knocked this thing off, and we've created the circle, a perfect circle, an equal temperament scale. But the problem is, no, please, really? The mean tones. You're saying like the... Exactly what we're going to get to. Actually, this book, I don't actually have it all here. But, right, we knocked off, we create equal temperament. And this is same, you know, this is where Bach says. And why did we create the equal temperament? Because if you actually had a scale which was pure, look at how uneven this thing is. Very good. We're going to get to this in a minute. Look at all these numbers. In an equal temperament, if you want to modulate from key to key, if you want to go from to... You need to have the same distances between all these. Otherwise, the more you move up, the more you're going to get out of tune. If you want to come back to the original note you played, all right, one-note samba now. One-note samba. What are the lyrics? Mm-hmm. Nice voice. Can you translate what you just sang? What did you just sing in English? What do the lyrics mean? This is just a little...
Yeah.
How lovely.
Yeah.
Other rules are soon to follow, but the note is still that note.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da.
And who want all of the notes go to a lone end.
Yeah, going to a lonely
It's a
end.
metaphoric with people with relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If you want everybody, you will stay alone.
But the end, I think there's also something, you come back to that one note. If you don't know whatever, then play the note you know. The whole song is actually like a key. I mean, this is corny again, but it's like, I sort of found out what these keys were, and I hope you all take these keys home and just use them to the best. Right?
Yeah.
And you come back to the one note, and then, what's it? What is does anyone? You seem to know. Please, hello. The end part. Something about. A consequence of you, right? That's. Oh.
Stay. I don't know how to translate.
Right, and then, okay, so we come back to the note. All right, we'll take that for faith. If we want to come back to the note we know at the end, starting from one note, then we have to make this equal temperament scale. Now it's interesting, the mean tone question. We realize there actually have been other scales. You know that. For example, name off 3 of them. There have been names of other scales besides equal temperament. 10-tone even tempered? Oh, actually, that would be, I'm thinking about 12-tone scales. Still 12 tones, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Pure, wonderful. Another? Whole tone scale is not a 12-tone equal temperament scale, but it's a scale. I might say, okay, pure tone, pure minor, Werkmeister scale, what are some other ones? I'm blanking out, I can't remember. Here's how to do it, all right? Like a mean tone is another one. What if, all right, we know now some things on this scale harmonize better than other notes with a scale, like, right? So if this fifth is so important in making melodies, why should it get equal, you know, this is evil, okay? This is the evil Pythagorean comma, which makes impure harmonies. What if we distribute this thing a little bit evenly? What if instead of making equal temperament, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, we cut it unevenly, so we have maybe, so the fifth maybe gets only a little bit of evil Pythagorean comma, and let's say the 7th note, the like that note is used much less in the scale, that gets a little more Pythagorean comma. We still have the same 6 hertz here of stuff we have to get rid of, or we have to do something with it, but we put it in different places in the scale. That's where we get these scales, like mean tone, exactly what she's talking about. Mean tone, I think actually, there are different definitions of it. There are different ways to spread it. Like I think if you're talking about a pure minor scale, then you take this little bit and you just sort of, and you only, there are 3 or 4 notes that you don't use, they get all the evil stuff. And the good notes stay good, the good notes stay pure. In a mean tone, I think it's distributed evenly, so each one gets proportionate to how much, you know, it's like the first one gets, 8, the next one gets 6, the next one gets 4, something like this. Okay? Now that we've established that, hold on, where do we go? Do we want to take a little breathing break? Because I realize this is getting a bit academic and heavy, and it's not so much fun.
It is, and I think there's a second lecture this afternoon, too.
It's 3 o'clock now, and I was supposed to finish
and
at
we
2.
have lunch now.
Okay, I didn't want to keep everybody. Hold on. Let's see how much we have to go through, because after we do that, we may not have so much. All right. Well, actually, since we've got through discovery of scales, yeah, okay. Let's move quickly here, and then we can move on to the Theremin thing, and then we might already be almost done. Okay? Harmony. What if, we were talking about whole tone scales, what if we divided the scale, instead of in 12 notes, which seems to be what the human ear can most closely distinguish, into different numbers? Let's say we made a scale with 14 notes. Da 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 da. Which ones would be the ones that would give us the closest pure harmonies in music? We have a graph here from the same book, and it's actually calculated by, does anyone know who Wendy Carlos is? Wendy Carlos, okay. Does anyone want to explain? What was her most famous record? Please. Switched on Bach, right? Where she played 1 note at a time on a synthesizer. This is, of course, also the invention of the Moog synthesizer, and we're going to get to this. She also became the composer of Soundtrack Orange, The Shining, Tron. She did a lot of work, and she also was a male-to-female transsexual, by the way. She discovered at some point she wanted to be a woman. I have the records from her. How can I forget this? She actually calculated various scales. Here we have them. I'm going a long ways to explain why we should simply throw out our computers and try to play as human music as possible, but I think this is an interesting way to do it. You probably won't hear this again for the rest of your life. She did several records which involved microtonal tunings, and these are what you see on the graph. She's experimenting with things which are Balinese, yeah. Slendro scales, Pelog scales, and also with pure mean tones. And she even explains here, with her own voice, what's wrong with our equal temperament scale and what you can hear. So let's play this record. This is the voice of Wendy Carlos demonstrating the sound that she made. All right, want me to play this? And you can't quite tell if it's a man or a woman, actually. It's all right, so a bit about natural tuning. That's why I'm saying it. I know it's very hard, perhaps, to see this right away, but We're talking about colors here. We're talking about painting, a painting with different colors other than red, blue, yellow, green. And now, move on, because I don't want to be here any more than, say, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Can we do this? And then we can just listen to records or talk or have questions, okay? Sorry, I hope it's not too long. What is the proof that this makes any difference at all? Why can't we just listen to loud rock, crass, techno, whatever, and just, beat our brains to death? Secret Life of Plants. Who made the album? Thank you. And I think he really got into this. Okay, it's a bit of like hippie stuff, this is a bit, some of the science in here is dubious, but it's got some very interesting things to say about what music does. Let's look. Page 14. Okay, we're on page 15, 16, and 17 now. And it talks about this crazy woman who, maybe she's not so crazy, I think she's very sane, who played different kinds of music to plants and charted how they grow, how much water they use, how the roots developed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and, this is the 60s. Sorry, question? So, for each of these species, Singh played several ragas. We're in 60s, we're in Indian music, from this experiment, we concluded in this Indian magazine, he had proven beyond any doubt that harmonic sound can affect the growth, flowering, fruiting, and sealed yield of plants. So this woman, I think in America, tries to duplicate this. We're on page 16 now, over here. This is Mrs. Retalak. We don't know who she was, but she did us a great service. Okay, in the first experiment, trying to pinpoint a musical note, she tried an F note and played it without interruption, unremittingly for 8 hours in one chamber and 3 hours intermittently, on and off, in the other chamber. In the first chamber, her plants were stone dead within 2 weeks. In the second chamber, the plants were much healthier. If you play one note and pound it at people over and over, well, if you do it to your plants will probably die. That's the point. I seriously doubt that it would have a different effect on human beings, except we hardly realize it because we live for 100 years or so, well, 80 years. Let's move on. It gets even more interesting. Mrs. Retalak and Professor Brahman had no idea. They wondered if the plants would simply succumb to fatigue or boredom or had simply been driven out of their minds. I'm also kind of interested in this because, well, I got into botany in Germany because the whole city is full of forests. And also, when you think about plants, they're curious because plants shouldn't be able to hear anything, and that's what is everybody's objection. Plants have no ears. They don't even have a brain. So what's happening here? Okay, let's move on. But they were not indifferent to two musical forms. They were exposed to Haydn, Beethoven, and Brahms. And other 18th and 19th century European scores. They grew toward the transistor radio, even twining the leaves lovingly around it. I think some of this is kind of like hippie, but it's possible. Some even tried it, all right. But the rock broadcasts, the squashes grew away from the rock broadcasts and even tried to climb the slippery walls of their cage. Interesting. Let's go down. The rock music caused some of the plants to grow abnormally tall and put out excessively small leaves, or they were stunted. That means they just didn't grow, all right? The ones who were listening to classical were flowering. Even during the first week, the rock stimulated plants. I want to say, I think she's using a certain kind of rock here. She must be playing Led Zeppelin, because I think, love the Rolling Stones. There's a lot of great music that is great. Oh, by the way, another thing that came to mind. Human beings do have sexual organs. Plants do too, but rock says something to us sexually that I'm not sure. I think plants wouldn't care, actually, about Rolling Stones talking about, what's the woman? Honky Tonk Woman. All right, so plants are reacting in a very innocent, naive manner. We're using much more water than the classical music plants, but apparently enjoying it less. They're sucking up all the resources they can, but they're still dying faster than they know. And here is some more of the evidence, blah, blah, the evidence. She's playing them Led Zeppelin, Vanilla Fudge, and Jimi Hendrix. Plants leaned away from this cacophony. They were going the other direction. She rotated the pots in 180 degrees, and the plants were leaning again away from the music. Now, here it gets interesting also. She plays percussion music to them. The percussion, in one case, causes a lean 10 degrees away from the plants when it's just banging drums. But when the same music is being played by violins, the plants lean toward the plants. So the plants lean toward the speakers. I can't explain all this stuff either. I'm just presenting it to you. But it says something about music. I mean, maybe it says something about what we're making. I don't know. Let's go on. Yeah, see, I don't totally buy all this. That's why I'm saying we have to take this, we have to question this too. We have to question the science. Yeah, it's very cute. It says that the most the best growth was from Indian raga music, and there may be some argument for this. First of all, you notice modulation, I don't want to say modulation is not natural, but modulation, when we're playing with an equal temperament scale, which is jazz and classical and all this stuff, it actually goes against the natural scale. It's not as pure, the harmony. And furthermore, a lot of the rhythms are very simple. A waltz is dun, dun, bum, 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 it's 3/4. With raga music, they seem to grow the best because raga music is rhythmically very complex. You have these, does anyone know how to count the raga beats? All right. All Indian music, it's just like we were counting 4/4 on the dance floor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all of, right now, Western rock, whatever. Indian classical music works on, I forget the name of it. A raga is a rhythmic section. It's a sequence of patterns, and I learned this because my friend in high school was this girl who was trained in South Indian dance. We learned how Vishnu destroys the world by opening up his eye and burning you with divine thunder. And she would, every time we watched an Indian dance concert, she would count. It would be 1, 2. Oh, by the way, you know what? I've forgotten completely about the blues demonstration. I'm so sorry. We have a blues player here who can do 1, 4. Will you do that for us later, perhaps? Or, all right, sorry, totally forgot. This is how you count a raga. 1, 2, 3. It might be 3 and 4, 3 and 4, 5 and 7. It would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Back to the top. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This would be the cycle of the dance that everybody follows with all their gestures. You can see how rhythmically complex this can get. All right? And furthermore, the scales of Indian music, although people say they're 41 to 53 tones, actually musicologists have found that it falls basically along 12 tones. In other words, it's basically very closely related to what we have here, but there are smaller tones that are decorations. Like, it's like a blue note when you're singing in jazz. It's like, oh, you kind of go off. Someone, yeah? A blue note, yeah? Playing this music, the plants seem to grow the best. All right, so let's move on here and see what happens with something very close to what we're doing, jazz music. All right? All right, we're talking about Indian ragas. Exceeded by reaction to Ravi Shankar, they started reaching towards the source of classical music, and they bent almost 60 degrees towards the speaker. Surprise from jazz. When the plants heard recordings by Duke Ellington and 2 discs by Louis Armstrong, 55% of the plants still lean 50 to 20 degrees toward the speaker. So I think we can, there's hope. Music with great harmonic progression can still have a great sense of rhythm, even if it's a simple 4/4 rhythm, and at least for the plants, it's something positive.
So jazz is the teacher?
Jazz is a positive thing, well, if it's Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington. Right? So it goes on, and I think we're finished with that piece. And let's see what else we should cover.
Any questions about plants and music?
Huh? It's dubious science, do you think? You suspect it's dubious science, right? I admit, I think there may be something funny about it. Sorry? You have a question?
What I'm thinking about it, though, is that Jimi Hendrix did really harmonically complex.
And she may not have chosen the good... I think it depends on the piece. You know, it really... You know, but it's true that a lot of what Jimi Hendrix... The rhythm is so live, a lot of it's very uneven. It's not a regular... I mean, maybe what the plants want is easy listening. Maybe they want Burt Bacharach and Muzak in the elevator. I mean...
Yeah.
You know? And Jimi Hendrix is something we have a brain, and that's something else. And that makes us appreciate things with a social level and a context and complexity. We know Jimmy is doing it on purpose. Jimmy could play Muzak, you know, but he's chosen not to do it, and that's what excites us.
What I don't get is the role all this plays for your personal feelings and emotions for music, you know? Like, well, I never liked Jimi Hendrix, for instance, no matter what he did, or it just doesn't appeal to me.
I think this is where we get into the question of taste,
I don't think that I'm dying from that.
I can only say anecdotes here, and I think we all have anecdotes about taste. I'm a big Carpenters fan, and I've never been the biggest fan of the Beatles, even though I know intellectually they're very well-written songs. Strawberry Fields is a great song.
I hate the Beatles.
Okay, well, that's why we're friends, Garrett. But, you know, I know intellectually, it's just that when I hear the Beatles singing with that name, I'm just like, oh God, please, you know, this is like, it's just sing in key. And when I hear Karen Carpenter sing, sing a song, sing out loud, I think, great.
But I hate the Carpenters also.
There we go. Well, you see, you're not, all right, here comes the story. My gay English friend goes to a Carpenters convention in England. 2,000 screaming gay men. Isn't Karen Carpenter the greatest singer of the 20th century? And yeah, oh, sorry. She sure is. I mean, I think so. You know, maybe there's something in the brain of, you know, I don't want to say it's gay men. I think it's something about male-female, too. I think it's male hormones do something which, you know, you have to have this, you know, and there's a way that, you know, and so it's all valid. Oh, Annie Lennox. Is anybody here? I know you're an Annie Lennox fan. You know what happened when my friend went to an Annie Lennox concert? You've never been to one, right? 5,000 screaming lesbians, all with short hair. Annie Lennox. I mean, it's a social aspect. You can't argue with that's the way nature is, you know? I'm saying with emotion, too, I can't tell you exactly why I think Karen Carpenter's voice is beautiful, but it's very harmonic. It has a certain tone range. The thing about she's actually deeper than most women's voices. Karen Carpenter's voice is almost like a cross between a man and a woman, right? Actually, that's how she did We've Only Just Begun. They had her singing half an octave higher, and I think the producer, Herb Roberts, said, all right, down an octave. You guys have probably seen the movie or something, Karen Carpenter's story. You know, we've only just begun, and hit. That's it. Record it right away. That really was the story. I wasn't there, but. So I mean, you know, that's one of the mysteries of the universe, you know, why you find something beautiful, and there are 1,000 reasons, you know. But I think as you travel more, as you expand your taste, you also learn to appreciate more and more different things. You know, you just realize that, you know, and that's what going to clubs is about, right? It's like, I didn't know this was beautiful, but I found out it was beautiful on a certain Sunday morning, you know, raving off my head off E. Question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask this for quite a while, actually. When you speak about, like, played live or organic music or whatever you want to say, I mean, from my point of view, I think I sort of force myself to listen to certain things that I find cheesy or
For sure.
I don't know, that I don't really like at first, you know. Would you say that that is a way of exploring music,
Absolutely.
That's your way of exploring music?
I think, of course, you should just forget about shame and, you know, oh my God, if my friends, you know, hear me listening to this, you know, Carpenters for one thing. You know, yeah, music is music, and, you know, what kind of social and political significance people attach to it, I'm sorry, that's their problem. Especially, what I'm saying also is this. If this were normal, like if I'm talking to people at MTV, this would be different. We here in this room are people who are going to produce music and distribute music. I think we have now I'm getting really political. I think we have a much bigger role in leaving aside our egos and our personal preferences, like, I'm a rocker, you know, I will never listen to the Carpenters. You know, of course, you just have to forget about that and say, I hear the harmonic content and what the Carpenters are doing, and I'm going to try to use that, but I'm going to do it in a different way. I'm going to use my electric guitar and jam the hell out of sing, you know, sing, and you know, right? I think that's a proper answer to that. Let's go quickly. Sorry. Have you got the Theremin MPEG ready? Okay, what I discovered, we were watching this Nightingale thing, right? And I actually found the Nightingale, not kidding. After realizing the reason, why did we go through all this, of why the equal temperament music and all this computer music and looped music was not enough for me, one day in the shop where I was working, a girl came in and started playing the Theremin. And does anyone know what the Theremin is? Most of you know what it is. Okay, for those of you who don't, where's that DVD now? Hello? Here it is. Uh-oh. No, where's the original? Well, it's not here. It's all right. Okay. The Theremin is the first synthesizer. It was invented in 1917. It's a box, and you play it without touching it. The scientist who invented this thing also was Leon Theremin. He also invented the radar. What is a radar? You go into a field, there's a noise, right? There's a when you go in here, there's a blip on the map. He also invented the first color television. Let's just play the Pamela thing, Autumn Leaves Improv. I met this girl who just not only had perfect pitch, I mean, she, without playing keyboard, she knows what the pitches are. She was 20 years old. She walked into the store and just started playing these boxes that we had in the store, not touching, mind you. Have we got it? There she is.
The Nightingale.
The Nightingale. I met her. And then there's this movie. I was hoping we could show this. It's all right if you didn't come to Beat Street last night. You're forgiven because only one person showed up. But please, see this movie if you get a chance. It's all about hip-hop from '84. But, you know, nobody was saying, there's no gangster rap. There's nothing back then. This is music and dance in its purest form. And if all the people in this movie were white, this would probably be like Gone with the Wind or Casablanca, but America, there you have it. But it's such an incredible movie, and it's full of hope and everything. This movie we could show later. It's about the invention of the theremin. And can we go to my piece now? So I got this box, and I just went crazy for 2 years and tried to learn to play it as she does. Oh, there we go.
How do you play this?
Basically, it's into DJing too. What does a DJ do with the right hand? Right, all right, pitch. The other hand? Fader. One is doing the pitch, the other is doing the volume. What does a guitar player do with the left hand? Pitch, volume. And this box works on the exactly same principle. You have pitch, distance, and I really wish we had a theremin here so I could properly demonstrate this, but you'll have to imagine. All the people. And this is the volume. So, as I get closer, I'm just going to imagine this, okay? You have about 3 or 4 octaves here, just like on a keyboard. You have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. It's just free. There's no spacing. You're just doing it by your ear and you're finding it. It's a lot like singing, actually. And that's what's so fun about it, because suddenly you're not restricted to this note. And if you're going to play false notes too, you hear it. It's just like a violin. Are there frets on a violin? No. You do it by ear. Do, re, mi. So you go. And if my hand pulls away, I get volume. So I'm ooh, 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 for example. It might be la 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 la. Right? Like that. And suddenly, this instrument everything made sense, because and this girl taught me this, and we ended up doing demonstrations. That's what you're seeing, is we're doing demonstrations for Moog and everything together, and we traveled together with him. I don't want to, not showing off, but it was very nice. Bob Moog was the nicest person I ever met. And what was I thinking? Yeah, and they taught me, whatever instrument you find, you just have to find the tonal note. You just find the root, and you find everything that's harmonic to it. And it doesn't matter if you've studied theory or not, because, as it says on the sheet, all this stuff seems like it's like all academic and whatever, but theory is not a justification for pleasure of music. The pleasure of music is there already. You're going to enjoy it, whatever it is, whether you know the theory or not. Theory is only there to explain your pleasure and to help you expand it. Everything that you can take home from this lecture and from learning all the musical theory you can, it's just going to make it better and make it more pleasurable. So why not do it? It's harmless. Where do we go now?
Any more questions?
We could just end there, yeah. That could be, and then we could go through all the Oh, sorry. I think that's about it, really. Okay, there are 2 things down here we could talk about, but I think with you guys, I feel may not be necessary. The joy of the 8-track. Oh, that's why we have this here.
Question, actually.
Question. Sorry?
I was just wondering if there are any VST instruments that allow you to program in scales.
Yes, I'm sure there are. First of all, there is a whole list of instruments that do it.
What?
If you VST, I'm sure you can. Right? Can you do like Werkmeister tuning, just tuning tone?
No, but can you make your own, like in the Kurzweil, how you can?
Yeah,
program
that's yeah. I don't know. Can anybody answer that question? Yes, just yes. Which software?
What is it?
Native Instruments. Okay, that's great. And you're absolutely right. In a lot of classic modules, if you actually look, Yamaha made a whole ton of them, like TX81Z, blah, 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 Kurzweil, and Roland Sound Canvas, which you get for like 300 euros or something. You can tune every note individually. You have A, B, C, D, F, D, blah, 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 and you can go up and down like, the numbers are a bit weird because they go by 60 and not by 100, but you can kind of approximate. You can say, okay, my 5th, I know the 5th is a bit flat in the equal temperament, I'm gonna make it a little bit sharper. And if you really look on the scale, look, it's not tuning everything flat. It's quite different from that. If you look on the chart that we gave here, let's just imagine we're doing this, okay? Because it's good practice. It's mental practice. Mental practice. Okay? We're looking on page 11 here. Look, how would I go on this keyboard and tune something to something that's closer to the natural harmonies? Do, re, mi. Major third, for example, do, re, mi, do, mi. That major third is a full 14 cents. It's 386, if not 400. I would go right on that Roland, and I would do do, re, do, re, mi. I would take that mi and make it that much flatter. And if you play, you'd be amazed how different the music really sounds. I mean, it really works. It's strange, but it's like, this doesn't sound any more like a MIDI keyboard. It sounds like something else. It sounds better. All right, I think we can actually finish, I hope. So, okay, what I'm saying is putting it all into practice. Now that we know all these different parts, what have we got? We've got chic, we've got drums, we've got drums, one track for 2 or 3 tracks. We've got a bass, we've got a riff, rhythm, lead guitar, strings, and horns. It's 8 tracks. Carpenter's designed 8 tracks. Oh, I know, because in the Xerox package we have this. In Touch for Men was a gay magazine in America from 1978. And strange, well, this is when people were taking an interest in disco music. Peter Brown, who did a disco hit, and I have the record here, dun, 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 did everything on an 8-track. Finally playing a record. I mean, I'm always asking, if people could do this on this machine, what's the problem we have today? The problem is not with technology, it's with the concept and the way people think, and the way people approach music and the way they approach success also. MySpace and all that, but no more criticism. I think this is a positive, shining example of what can be done. Only as a joke, the next page after that is Gay Report from Melbourne, happens to be the exactly same magazine, 4 pages later. It serves no musical purpose, it's just there to amuse you, because on the next page you see a bunch of gay people in Melbourne in 1978 wearing pretty normal clothes and doing a protest.
It looks like a freedom march.
It's a freedom march. At the time of innocence. No leather, no rainbow flags. They're just wearing like camel-colored, sweaters, and they're out. So back to the time of innocence again. You can just read. And of course, in Sydney, the first Gay Australian Bodybuilders Association has just been formed. Let's call him Alan. Why shouldn't gay bodybuilders have their own club too? And in 3 minutes to sum up really quickly, following that, are we? Yeah? Anything?
If there are. Aren't there any more questions?
Okay, this thing about my personal thing about, we could go on and I would love to do, does anybody have patience for a 3-minute blues demonstration about? Yes? Okay, guitar player. Is he gone? Thank you, you're there. Just upstairs, it's Benji, right? As I was getting the keyboard out, discovered that we have a fully trained, proper blues guitar player here. I'm sorry to keep you waiting for so long. And we can kind of put into action and see this whole thing about 1-4-5. So the most basic elements of a tonal scale being it's in the middle. There's no
It should work.
It should work. You're gonna play an E, right? It's actually really simple to see on the keyboard how blues from the 30s, 40s, 50s on, this became jazz, this became disco, this became everything, and it just comes down to 3 chords. It comes down to this basic 1-5, 1-4, and it's just the way you play it. Here we go. All right. Can you give us your root note? All right. So, yeah. How, of course, and again, it's obvious to those of you who have classical training, but for anybody, doing jazz, whatever, what are we doing here? We're just basically doing numbers. We're doing 1, 4, yeah, 4. Benji wrote this out for me. Thank you. 1, 4, 1, 1. 4, 4, 1, 1. 5, 4, 1. 5, right? I hope you don't mind using Roman. It's really 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. That's it. And anything in your head. It may take all the fun out of listening to dance music. From now on, you will go to listen to anybody doing a looped groove or something, and you'll just be, all they're doing is ones. 1, da, 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 da. Honestly, that's the way I hear music now. And it hasn't taken the fun out of it, because when you hear something really good, you realize, like Debussy, you realize, oh my God, I can't just do 1-4-5s anymore. He's doing all this stuff that, what is he doing? But it's fabulous. If you can just, and I think you can see how easy it actually is once you listen to anything just to break this down this way. you should take this into your composition and just spell out a bunch of numbers and play with them and see where they go. And thank you so much, because there's a better demonstration on that. Okay.
Any more questions?
As a final, I'm not even going to get into it, but a final touch here, okay? Studio acoustics. How many people have DJ'd here in clubs with shitty sound? Not so many as I thought, okay. Well, I've attached this for your information, an article about studio acoustics, about how to build your own studio and what you need to watch out for, which is, because this is such a, I mean, there are less DJs here, so I don't think it's so relevant. I'm not going to really talk about it. How sound reflects from walls. Big flat walls are bad. How you putting on, like if you go to the control rooms upstairs, you notice they're not parallel surfaces, right? It's not square, 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 square. They're kind of diagonal corners, right? So the sound doesn't bounce in and double in on itself, so it doesn't conflict. And also, what kind of acoustic materials are used? Do I put carpet on the walls? Do I put big blocks on the walls? Is it okay if I have glass windows in my room? These are very, very relevant, because if you have proper acoustic, you will hear all the frequencies which are meant to be heard. You'll hear the harmonies which are there, and the harmony, and you know, what's not there shouldn't be there. If you have bad acoustics, you will hear nothing correctly. And that is the problem with 90% of the clubs today. But as I said, we're going to spend 1 minute on that, because there's nothing else to say about that. But here's all this information if you're interested in it, and I hope it helps. And thank you for staying with me until the end.
Thank you very much.